Hi, and welcome to another episode of Where in Westford Is It? I'm Leslie Howard, president of the Westford Historical Society and Museum, and I'm here with Geoff Hall.
Who is a volunteer at the museum.
Who's a volunteer at the museum. And today we're going to be talking about the Westford Knight.
Leslie, you moved to town, you said, about 14 years ago. Did you move here because of the Westford Knight?
I had never heard of the Westford Knight. It was actually 1 or 2 years after moving here when I first heard about it, and I had no idea what it was, but I was determined to find it. And for some reason, I thought that it was on a hiking trail somewhere off in the woods.
Okay.
So you grew up in town. Mm-hmm. When did you first know about it?
Well, I went to the Abbott School at the time. I graduated from there, and that rock is right out front.
It's right out front.
And I'd never heard of it. And I'm, you know, from the book from this book that Geoff Henry put together, he kind of gives a chronology of how this developed. Mm-hmm. And it's really been more the last 30 years or so that's been larger focus on it, even though if you go back, you can find people who were interested in this thing back in the 1950s. Hodgman refers to it as what? Yeah,
and even before Hodgman, his Reverend Edwin Hodgman came out with the History of Westford in 1883, but in 1874, the Gazetteer of Massachusetts actually came out with the first known mention of it, that there was a rock on the side with some etchings on it. Mm-hmm. So it goes back, and they had determined then that no one who had been living in town for the last sort of 50 years or whatever had known about it. Mm-hmm. So it even predates then.
So then there's the Fisher boys, okay?
Yep, yep.
Hodgman refers to it as Indian markings. Of course, anything back then would have been referred to as Indian markings. The Fisher boys who lived in the house right there, they were alleged have, you know, I guess, put a pipe on whatever this Indian carving looked like at the time, and punched holes in it and so on. As time progressed, there were others who seemed to be fascinated by it. You know a little bit about that background too, don't you, Leslie?
Yeah, so there have been people from Harvard coming out to study it. We've had several enthusiasts come through the museum. I've had one talk my ear off for almost an hour about it, which was fascinating. But, you know, people have come and said, yes, there is all of this evidence, and then people will say, no, it's not possible. They're glacier markings. But I think a lot of what people can agree on is that there are some man-made markings on there. Mm-hmm. And we have had some people come out who have said that these markings are hundreds of years old. So that's before the Fisher boys, and you know, which supports the 1874 that they have come out. And there's been a lot of research done on pre-Columbian exploration of North America, and I'm not an expert on that, but there is evidence that
there's a lot more evidence of things that, well, American Stonehenge, Mystery Hill, okay, in New Hampshire for one, the Newport Tower, okay, in Newport, Rhode Island. But I know that David Brody, who is with the Historical Society, has written several books, and one was The Cabal of the Westford Knight, and my first contact was David, who was after I read the book, I said, where is this encampment site? And it turns out it was right down the street from where I lived and where I skated as a young boy and never saw. And my brother, when I took him down there, never saw it either. But it's a foundation now. What that is part of. But David's put a lot of these together. But he's gone beyond that to talk about other evidence of pre-Columbian. And I taught United States history for years. And, you know, it was usually the Vikings, and then there was Columbus. And, you know, we took it from there. because there was no documented evidence of any of that. And that's part of the problem with this Westford Knight is there's no documentation.
Right. The Earl Henry Sinclair and James Gunn, who came from around the Orkney Islands up in Scotland, and they have some documentation that they have made it to Greenland or even Nova Scotia. So, you know, there's evidence along the way, which is great, and so and that also they also loop in with the Zeno narrative, which came out of Italy, and so we have information on that at the museum. I won't get into all the maps now.
I was going to say, but there's an awful lot of information. Just like you, when I was docenting, more times on a Sunday, people come in and say, "Where's the Westford Knight?" And it is, if you're looking for it, the area has been preserved. So that the rain and the weather does not wash it away. I guess it looked on right now is folklore with Westford. And maybe in the future we'll learn more about it, maybe with advancements in science. But for now, who knows? Who knows?
I think it's fun. I think it's a fun thing to have in town, and it creates some excitement.
It sure does. Hey, come by again.